The divorce papers had already been filed. When it came time to divide our property, I claimed the house. I insisted on keeping it, and though Vin tried to dismiss the idea, he never once argued with conviction. He simply left, coldly, abruptly, walking out of the hospital room after muttering a few indifferent words. I remember calling out to him, asking him to wait, to at least talk to me. My voice echoed through the sterile room, but he never turned back. That was how I was discarded, abandoned like something useless, even as I fought the most terrifying battle of my life: cancer. For a while, I thought the loneliness would swallow me whole. But strangely, the anger, grief, and despair that had once ruled my heart began to fade away. It was as though my love for Ben, my husband for 30 long years, had evaporated overnight. As I lay in that hospital bed, with only the rhythmic beeping of the machines to keep me company, I realized something startling. Ben's indifference was not just cruelty, it was a form of freedom. A clarity washed over me. The man who had belittled and humiliated me for so long would finally face a reckoning. I didn't cry that night. I didn't beg for him to come back. Instead, I started planning, quietly, calmly. My name is Wendy Morgan, 50 years old, once a devoted housewife, now a woman reborn from betrayal. My name is Wendy Morgan, a 50-year-old housewife who once believed she shared a loving, supportive marriage with her husband, Ben. For 30 years, we lived together without children, a quiet existence in a suburban home that I once thought was filled with warmth. But over time, the bond we shared corroded, eaten away by indifference and selfishness. In my understanding, marriage should be a partnership, a delicate balance of challenge and support, of lifting each other up when life feels too heavy. Yet, in our home, that balance never existed. Whenever I returned home from errands or hospital checkups, Ben's first words were rarely of concern. Instead, he would demand dinner, as though it were his birthright. On weekends, while I cooked, cleaned, and handled every chore, he relaxed, lost in his own world of leisure, entirely detached from mine. He never noticed my exhaustion, never once asked, "Are you all right?" Even when I was sick, even when my body ached from constant work, he stood by and watched. To him, being a housewife meant endless service, not shared companionship. In the early years, I tried to change things. I spoke gently, then firmly, hoping to make him understand that partnership meant sharing, not dominance. But Ben never listened. He told me, "You're a housewife, Wendy. You don't get to complain." That was the moment I understood. Love alone cannot sustain a marriage. I didn't expect blind devotion, but I yearned for small acts of kindness, a word of comfort on hard days, a touch of understanding, something human, but Ben never offered that. He saw me not as his partner, but as part of the furniture, something useful until it broke. As the years passed, I began to see the cracks that had long been there. Our marriage had become a ritual, two strangers bound by routine, not affection. I could feel the emptiness growing between us. Hollow and echoing like an abandoned house, it was during one of those long, silent days that I first sensed something wrong within me. Not emotional this time, but physical. My body, always fragile, was sending signals I could no longer ignore. And that was when life decided to strike in full force. The fatigue had been creeping up on me for weeks. A heaviness I couldn't shake off. An ache that whispered of something more sinister. When I finally confessed my worries to my father, he immediately took my hand and said, "Let's go to the hospital, right now." After a series of tests and tense hours spent in sterile waiting rooms, the doctor finally returned with the results. His expression was serious but calm. "Mrs. Morgan," he said gently, "it's cancer. But you're fortunate, we caught it early. With immediate treatment, your chances are very good." Cancer. The word echoed in my mind like a distant thunderclap. For a few moments, I couldn't breathe. Then, strangely, I found myself nodding, as though my body understood what my heart refused to. "All right," I whispered. "Let's begin treatment as soon as possible." My father squeezed my hand. His eyes were heavy with worry, but his voice remained steady. "We'll get through this, Wendy. You're strong." When I was admitted, I asked my father to bring only the essentials from home. Everything happened so fast. The paperwork, the white hospital gowns, the faint antiseptic smell that clung to every corner of the ward. Ben, of course, wasn't there. He was busy with work, as always. Still, despite everything, a small, foolish part of me wanted him to know. Perhaps, deep down, I still believed there was some compassion left in him. That once he heard I was sick, truly sick, he would rush to my side. That night, I sent him a brief message. They found cancer. I'm being hospitalized for treatment immediately. Then I waited. Hours passed. I watched the hospital corridor lights flicker, listened to the muffled footsteps of nurses, and stared at the glowing phone screen. No reply. No call. Not even a single acknowledgement. I lay there wondering, after 30 years of marriage, was a single word of concern too much to expect? The days passed in a blur of treatment schedules, IV drips, and sleepless nights. I kept my phone beside my pillow, checking it between doses of medication, hoping to see Ben's name light up the screen. But there was nothing. No call, no message, not even a simple, "Are you okay?" I had told myself not to expect much, and yet the silence hurt more than I could bear. Lying in that hospital bed, I imagined him struggling at home. Maybe he'd burn his breakfast or forget to pay a bill. Perhaps in my absence, he'd finally understand the value of everything I did for him. Perhaps he'd miss me. But the truth was harsher. He didn't visit. He didn't care. And his absence made one thing painfully clear. There was no love left in his heart for me. I remember one night vividly. The pain from the medication's side effects was unbearable. My body trembled under the thin hospital sheets, and I wondered if I should stop treatment altogether. End it. But each time that thought surfaced, I heard my parents' voices, steady, loving, and unshaken. "You're doing great, Wendy. Don't give up. You'll get better." Their words became the rope I clung to in the darkness. And then, one day, when my body was too weak to even sit up, the hospital door suddenly swung open. It wasn't time for my parents' visit. I turned my head, expecting a nurse, but it was Ben. For a fleeting second, my heart fluttered with hope. Maybe finally he had come because he cared. Maybe he'd hold my hand, offer comfort, or even say something kind. Instead, he sat in the chair beside my bed, looked straight at me, at my thin face and hollow cheeks, and laughed. "So this is how bad cancer makes you look. You don't even look like a woman anymore." His words cut deeper than any scalpel could. I froze, staring at him, unable to speak. And before I could even recover from that blow, he added, almost cheerfully, "Ever since you've been hospitalized, it's been heaven for me. The house is a mess, but I don't care. Life is so much easier without you." The laughter that followed echoed through the sterile room, cruel and hollow. I felt my heart shatter in slow motion. The man I once loved, the one I had cooked for, cared for, and forgiven endlessly, looked at my suffering and found joy in it. At that moment, something inside me finally broke. I wanted to tell him to stop, to leave, to never speak another word, but my body wouldn't move. My tongue felt heavy, my arms limp against the sheets. I could only stare, hollow and motionless, as Ben continued to pour salt into wounds that were already bleeding. He noticed my silence and smirked. Then, leaning back in the chair, he said casually, "Oh yeah, by the way." The pause that followed felt eternal. "I've already filed the divorce papers. I'll be taking the house. You don't really have any right to refuse." For a moment, the world blurred. The white walls of the hospital room seemed to twist around me. My chest tightened, my vision dimmed. Had I heard him right? Divorce? Filed without even telling me? "Why," I whispered, but the word came out broken, faint as breath. Ben shrugged, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I've fallen for someone else. She's 20 years younger, but I'm serious about her. You're in the way." And just like that, my 30-year marriage was reduced to an inconvenience. He had said what he came to say. No apology, no hesitation, only satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. Then, as if dismissing an unimportant errand, he stood up and started walking toward the door. "Wait," I said weakly. My voice trembled, desperate, almost childlike. But he didn't stop. Not even for a second. There was no love left for me in him. None. Something inside me turned cold. The tears that should have come never did. Instead, a strange calmness settled over me, like ice forming on still water. "I see," I said softly. "Understood." He paused just long enough to give a satisfied laugh before leaving the room, the echo of his footsteps fading down the corridor. When the door clicked shut, I was alone again, utterly and completely. But this time, the loneliness didn't frighten me. It hardened me. That night, as the machines hummed beside my bed and pain pulsed through my veins, I made myself a promise I would live, I would recover, and one day, Ben would regret every cruel word he'd ever spoken. From that moment on, my battle with cancer wasn't just about survival. It was about revenge. After Ben's departure, the hospital felt even quieter than before. The rhythmic beep of the monitor was the only sound that tethered me to the present. Days crawled by. I threw myself into treatment with renewed resolve, pushing through the exhaustion, the nausea, the nights where pain blurred into hallucination. I had one goal now, to recover completely. Not for him, not even for myself. Perhaps, but to make sure Ben would one day look back and drown in the consequences of his choices. 2 days passed, though they felt like 2 months. I wondered if Ben had really filed for divorce, or if it had all been another one of his cruel attempts to unnerve me. The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I forced myself to stay focused on healing. Then one afternoon, as sunlight poured through the blinds, my phone began to vibrate. Ben. For a moment I stared at the screen, frozen. He was calling again and again, his name flashing persistently. Even after I put the phone on silent, I ignored him. Finally, irritated by the endless buzzing, I sent a curt message. "I'm in the hospital. It's inconvenient to have my phone ringing. Please stop calling." The calls stopped. But then came the texts, one after another. "Please, Wendy, talk to me just once." I was wrong about everything. "I'll apologize. Please, let me explain." His words were frantic, defensive, not out of love, but desperation. I didn't reply. Then came another message. "Can I come over there now?" I stared at the screen, my lips curling into a faint, cold smile. He must have realized why I had agreed to the divorce so easily. He must have discovered the truth. Still, I typed back only 2 words. "Do as you like." When Ben arrived, he burst into the room with the same arrogance he'd always carried. But this time, his face was pale, his voice trembling with panic. "Hey, what the hell is this all about?" To an outsider, it might have looked like an argument, but I knew better. His anger wasn't righteous, it was fear. Calmly picked up the small bank passbook lying on my bedside table and opened it to the page that held my secret. The one I had hidden for years. Across the neat printed lines, the numbers gleamed, $10,000. Ben's eyes widened. His jaw slackened. You have $10 million? He stammered. "Why didn't you tell me?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "You never asked." He blinked in disbelief, his voice rising with every word. "A housewife like you, how could you possibly have that kind of money? If I'd known, I never would have divorced you." I closed the passbook slowly and smiled. "That's not my problem, Ben." And in that moment, weak, bald, scarred from treatment, I had never felt more powerful in my life. My revenge had just begun. Ben's face was a storm of disbelief and greed. His voice cracked as he shouted, "If I'd known you had this much money, I never would have divorced you. It's your fault for keeping it a secret. You owe me half, at least half." He was trembling, not from guilt, but from rage at the thought of what he'd lost. I stayed calm, watching him unravel. "You divorced me without asking." "That's not my fault. You decided everything on your own. Stop making excuses," he barked. "A wife's money belongs to her husband. You have to give me that 10 million. The words were absurd. I couldn't help but laugh, a quiet, bitter laugh that only fueled his anger further. "What are you laughing at?" He roared. You think you're better than me now? You're just a sick woman who got lucky. For a moment, I looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man I had married, but a hollow shell consumed by pride, envy, and failure. So I told him the truth. I started investing 5 years ago. My father taught me. I just wanted to help with our finances, to feel like I was contributing something. And I did. I turned small savings into 10 million. I paused, my voice steady. I was going to tell you, when the time was right. But then I got sick, and before I could say anything, you divorced me. You walked away. His face twisted, half disbelief, half regret. He sank onto the chair, clutching his head. No, if I'd known. It's too late, I said quietly. You destroyed that chance with your own hands. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then he whispered, brokenly, Please, Wendy. My girlfriend found out about the money. She says she'll leave me if I don't get it from you. Please, I'll do anything. Help me. I stared at him. This man who had once called me worthless, now begging for mercy. His eyes were wet, his voice desperate, and I realized something tragic. He had never been this desperate for me. Only for my money. That was the moment every trace of love I had ever felt for him disappeared. Please, he cried again. Don't leave me like this. Leave, I said coldly. Wendy, leave, now. I pressed the nurse call button. Within minutes, a nurse and a security guard entered. I calmly explained that the man was disturbing my rest. Ben shouted, begged, even tried to grab my hand, but the guard pulled him away. His voice echoed down the hall as they dragged him out. Please, Wendy, I need you. But I didn't look back, not once. He came to the hospital several more times, but the nurses never let him near me again. Later, a friend told me that his girlfriend had dumped him after realizing he'd lied about the money. Now he was alone, penniless and forgotten. A fitting end for a man who once thought he owned everything. As for me, I survived. The treatment ended. My body slowly recovered. One morning, I stood before the mirror, fragile but alive, and for the first time in years, I smiled. The woman staring back wasn't the broken, obedient wife she once was. She was someone new, scarred. Yes, but stronger than ever. Today, I live peacefully, using the fortune I earned to build a quiet, independent life. Sometimes I still remember Ben, not with bitterness, but with clarity, because without his betrayal, I would never have found the strength to reclaim myself. And as the morning sun filters through my window, warm and golden, I whisper to my reflection, You won. Wendy, you finally won.